Welcome to Retire to a Life You Love with Michelle Gessner from Gessner Wealth Strategies. We inspire executives, professionals, and business-savvy women to better their finances and overcome the financial stresses of life. We do all of this by giving the advice you need to identify your goals and the confidence to achieve them, so you can retire to a life you love. Join us for this journey where we explore ways to win financially as Michelle draws from years of expertise and talks with today's top business minds about their wins, failures, and best practices.
Hello, and welcome to the Retire to a Life You Love podcast with your host, Michelle Gessner. I'm Wendy McConnell. Hi, Michelle. It's a Monday.
It is. Happy Monday, Wendy. How you doing?
Happy Monday. Yeah, okay, happy Monday. I'm good. How are you?
Well, listen, today we are going to continue on with our theme of talking about what we are doing in retirement. We've been talking a lot, and we will continue talking a lot about preparing for a secure retirement financially. I'll never stop talking about that. But I don't want to leave out some of the softer side of retirement planning, which is what in the heck are you going to do when you retire? So we've had a couple of episodes about that so far. We're going to do another one today. I'm very excited about that. So I'm going to introduce our guest today, Sue Mintz. And Sue is a certified retirement transition coach. So did you know that's a thing, Wendy?
I did not know. I mean, they really have everything, don't they?
They do. And so for people who just really need a little extra help, Sue's your person. We're going to ask her all kinds of questions about what that is and what she does. But I'll let her just get started and tell us more about herself. So Sue, what led you to become a certified retirement transition coach, and what do people need to know about that?
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, Michelle, thank you so much for inviting me to join you today. This is exciting, and kudos to you for doing this for your clients. I think so often financial advisors, wealth managers, whatever, they really only want to talk about finances. And like you said, they really didn't know that this was a thing, certified retirement transition coach. And the way that I got into it is in my career, I was a career coach and I was a leadership development coach. And I loved what I was doing. And I knew that when I retired, I really wanted to do something along those lines, but not really sure what. So my husband and I were in New York, and we were having coffee one morning, and he was reading the Wall Street Journal, and he said, "Sue, look at this. This is a guy, this front page story on Wall Street Journal about a guy who had retired, and he had tons of money in the bank. Financially, he was very secure. He retired. He went on his, quote, retirement honeymoon. And after a few months, he woke up one morning and he's like, now what? Now what do I do? I mean, he felt lost. He had lost his identity, his purpose, and he was driving his wife crazy. And so he said, I need to find something to do. So he Googled, I don't know what he Googled, but he found a retirement coach. And I was just very intrigued with that. And I did a little bit of research about it. And I found out what it meant to be a retirement transition coach. And I got certified. And here I am today. And by the way, he ended up doing something totally different than what he did on Wall Street. I think he became a fishmonger or something like that.
Oh, wow. And you had a background in your previous life, your career, in leadership development training and career coaching. So this wasn't too big of a leap for you.
Correct. But it's something that I'm very passionate about. And I just think it's so important. And I've always been somewhat of a disruptor in my jobs. And I thought this is a new way to disrupt the retirement, the definition of retirement planning.
The retirement talk track.
There you go.
Which is all finances, right? So,
exactly. Yeah. That's what we're always taught to do when we plan for retirement. Make sure you've got money.
And make sure you've got plans for happiness, right? We got to do that too. They go hand in hand.
I love the title of your podcast, Live the Life You Love. This is how we're going to love life, is when we live as well.
retire to a life you love. Yes, that's what we're here to do, and that's what we're about. So you talk about how a holistic retirement plan. So what do you mean by a holistic retirement plan?
Well, it goes back to the approach of, like we just talked about, how when we were in our early career days, it was like, make sure that you plan. The most important thing to do is to plan for finances and make sure that you're going to be financially secure when you retire. And no doubt that is like foundation. It's so important. But I liken it to a story about like a prisoner. What's the first thing a prisoner wants to do when he or she is in prison? They want to escape. And so what do they think about? They think about their escape plan, and they escape, but then what happens?
Right. They don't think about what's going to happen next.
Exactly. They don't think about, like, where are they going to go? What are they going to do? And they get caught and they get thrown back in jail. So I don't want to say that we're like prisoners, although sometimes I felt like a prisoner in my career. But yeah, I mean, you got to think about just not one part of the plan for retiring. You've got to think about the other plan, and that is planning for the non-financial side of retirement. And studies show that more retirees fail for financial reasons than for the non-financial reasons. You know, money helps us sleep at night, but it doesn't get us out of bed in the morning. And that's the main thing about planning for the non-financial side of retirement is we want to sleep well, but we also need to have a purpose to get up and have something to do every day.
So can you give some examples on how you help people prepare for a holistic retirement plan? So what would they do? What would be the first step?
I think the first thing is to explain to them and show them what are some of the things they need to expect when they retire. First of all, that it's a process. It's not an event. It's not like you get a cake and you leave and you turn in your badge and everything. It's a process. And there's different phases of it. It's like with any transition. It's like first you go through the honeymoon phase, and then you wake up one morning and you're like, oh gosh, now what am I going to do? And then you go through something called the messy middle, which is like you're trying to figure out, okay, well, what am I going to do? And then you end up in the new normal. And you can always go back to the messy middle again and try to figure out, okay, well, what am I going to do? But I think that's one of the main things is just to know that it's a process and it's not an event, and there's losses and there's gains when we retire. And those are other things that we talk about. Yeah, in the past, retire meant to withdraw. And I know with my parents and my grandparents, that's what they did. They withdrew and they stayed home and they watched TV or soap operas or news or whatever. And now more and more individuals are doing something called the rewiring, the reinventing, the repurposing.
So do you help people discover what those things are with your coaching? Is that what the first step would be?
Yeah, that's what we do. We talk about, okay, what are some of the things that you don't want to do when you retire? Let's talk about what are the things you don't want to do and what are the things that you do want to make sure you do. We also talk about the losses. When individuals retire, their social network collapses, their identity collapses, their purpose, ongoing learning. One of the things, Michelle, that I really struggled with was structure. I remember right after I retired, I woke up and I'm like, oh, what am I going to do today? And that, when we lose all that, it can ultimately lead to mental issues,
depression,
emotions, and also overall health. And that's something that we really need to focus on. And I talk about that with my clients. What's going to keep us financially, mentally, emotionally fit, physically fit as well.
So you would have some exercises for them to do to help answer this question.
Yeah. So let me describe the two programs and the two platforms that I use. One is called the Retirement Success Factors. And this is a self-assessment where the client will self-assess themselves on 15 retirement success factors. There are 15 factors that we need to be aware of as we transition into retirement. And the client will self-assess themselves on each one of these factors. For example, one factor is work reorientation. How emotionally connected are they to work today, and how emotionally connected do they want to be tomorrow when they retire? Perception of health, same thing. So we look at where the gaps are, and we determine where the coaching needs to come in. The larger the gaps, where they are today and where they want to be tomorrow for each one of these factors, that's where the coaching comes in. We look at the strengths and we look at the areas of focus, and there are typically 3 coaching sessions in addition to completing this self-assessment. The other program I offer is called the Now What program. Earlier, I talked about the messy middle, the process for retirement. We go through a honeymoon phase, then we go through the Now What phase, which can sometimes be the messy middle. We're not really sure what we're going to do. So what the Now What program does, it's a very structured 6-session coaching program where we talk about what do they want to be in terms of their purpose. What do they want in terms of a meaningful and satisfied retirement? And we talk about what it is they don't want, what it is they do want. And there's a lot of very thought-provoking questions and introspection in terms of this program. And it helps them define what it is that will get them out of bed in the morning. We talked about money helps you sleep at night. But this program really helps them figure out, okay, what's going to get me out of bed in the morning and get me excited and feeling purposeful and satisfied in my retirement. Something else we talk about are relationship issues that change. I mean, those of us that have significant others and children and parents, and there's a funny line that when we talk about couples, one might say, well, I married you for better, for worse, but not for lunch. We got to think about what it is how much time do we want to spend with each other? There's just so many different things that change when we retire that we don't anticipate. And so that's one thing that I definitely go over with my clients and talk about. How are they going to replace all of this? How are they going to replace their social network? How are they going to replace their identity? How are they going to replace their structure? Do they want to continue to learn? And how are we going to replace that?
Yeah, so that sounds like a lot of questions and answers. So you're talking about, at least the last time I checked, retirement is looking like 20 to 30 years. That's a long time. We're living longer. So that could be kind of overwhelming. How do you manage, or how can people plan for this next chapter of life in a way that's not overwhelming?
I think it goes back to having those discussions about what it is how are they going to replace what they lose? Also thinking about previous transitions. How did they get through those? And talking to individuals that have retired, and what is it that's keeping them going? Go talk to somebody that's 70s, 80s years old, and they've been retired for a while. We are living a lot longer. And what is it that kept them healthy and vital and remaining curious?
Just from my own perspective, sometimes when I took a week off at the end of 2023, which I hadn't done in a long time, and I remember thinking, what do I do? I didn't know what to do. And so I think it's, from where I sit, it may be you help people figure out what they like and what they want to do with their time, and they may not even know because it's been such a long time since they had that option. Would that be a fair statement?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a time where, and I can attest to this, I went from a role to my soul. This is something that I love to do. And we have all sorts of questions about what have you always wanted to do? When you were a kid, what did you do when you were a child? And a lot of times we go back to what we did, similar to what we did when we were growing up. I remember I used to play teacher, and I always used to play school, and here I am back doing that. But
right.
And also, you're right, we are living a lot longer, and we need to spend a lot more time on something that we always talk about in the coaching sessions is just not staying mentally, fit, but staying emotionally and physically fit.
Yeah, all of that works together.
So there's so many more resources out there now for those of us that will live longer, and we are living longer.
It's almost like you're going through the same identity crisis that you went through in your 20s. Like, what do I want to do? I'm done with college. What kind of job do I want to get? Who do I want to be? You know, we all went through some of that in our 20s, and then it happens again, except it's at the end of the career. Maybe, or what do you think?
No, you're totally right. We do. That's the name of my company is Retirementhood, and that's what I talk about. We go through adulthood, and through adulthood, there's so many transitions, like you just talked about. Your identity changes when you go from single to married, from a double income, no kids, from a single income, no kids, to a double income with kids.
Sure.
All that changes. And this is just another one of those and this is a transition, and it's one that requires some research and really some study.
And reflection.
Exactly.
And can I ask a little bit more about the exercises? You had mentioned maybe something that you liked or enjoyed as a child, but what if you only played sports and you just did dancing? And what if you don't really have anything that you could do now? What other kind of exercises do you recommend?
Why not continue to do sports? I know a guy that retired, and he loves to coach his grandchildren's soccer games. And riding bikes is something that we all used to do. It doesn't have to necessarily be a job that they go back to, but just something that they enjoyed doing when they were younger.
We just had a guest on our last episode who does refereeing. He's what do you call him? Official. He's a certified referee and likes to. So you could do that if it's not too physically strenuous. There's all kinds of sports. So.
Yeah, so it's not just about playing sports, just being involved in it. So that's great. That's a great answer.
Exactly. And this guy that became a fishmonger that I spoke about earlier, he loved fishing. He loves being by the ocean. And so he went back to that.
Yeah, whatever floats your boat, as they say. I couldn't resist.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
gardening. I have a friend that he went back to gardening, because he loved to help his parents. He did that growing up, and now he went gardening.
Yeah. So are there any typical expectations that you find people think about retirement that just maybe aren't correct? Maybe they're in for a surprise.
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of people think that it's going to be just all fun and games all the time. And absolutely, for some people, it is. No doubt. I mean, traditionally, we always hear about men that are getting ready to retire and they're just going to play golf 4 or 5 days a week. And sometimes that works. Sometimes that floats their boat. But other times, not so much. They get out and they realize that this just isn't what I want to do. Or like grandparents, they want to spend so much time with their grandkids, and they get out there and they start babysitting. And they're like, this isn't really what I want to do. Or grandparents who want to get out and live the life and do all sorts of traveling and do things. And then their adult children call on them to ask them to start babysitting a lot and stay with their kids while they travel. So yeah, there's a lot of expectations. And that's one thing that I encourage my clients to do, is to sit down. And we do have a process for this, to sit down and talk to family members about how do they see me when I retire, and how do I see you when I retire. I think family dynamics really, it can take a toll.
Yeah. In all phases of life, it can take a toll. So what is this term that I hear thrown around, unretired? What is that?
So, Michelle, that's sort of a new term that's come up. It's when we retire and then we think about, okay, well, I really don't like this and I want to unretire, and I want to go back to either finding a part-time job, maybe go back to my company that will give me a consulting role. This is another time when maybe we've been in retirement and we've been through the honeymoon phase, And now we're in sort of the messy middle, and this is when we decide to unretire, and we think about, okay, well, I want to go referee now. So they've gone from their role to their soul. And there's a lady that I just heard speak, and she said, sometimes it's okay to take a gap year after we retire, to go back and really think about what it is that we want to do. And then they'll come back and they will unretire. So there's phased retirement, but this isn't part of really, I guess it is part of unretiring. It's a lot of companies now are offering phased retirement, where individuals want to slow their time down. I mean, they don't want to work 5 days a week. They want to work maybe 2 or 3 days a week. So that's another way you can look at unretirement in terms of the traditional way that we know of as retirement.
Okay, that makes sense. So how do people know when it's the right time for them to retire? Do you have any advice there?
The first thing I say is, if you love your job and you love what you're doing, then don't retire. I mean, that's critical, because I think there's a lot of people that think that there is a career expiration date, and there's really not. That's an old rule. We retired when we were 60 or 62 or 65, but now there's no rule, and there's no best by date or expiration date.
Right. Your shelf life is up.
Yeah, your shelf life is up. You're 65 years old. Now you need to retire. Not anymore. But those of us that have struggled, and some of us have and some of us haven't, obviously, is that most of the time it's typically because it's not usually because of financial, it's because they're just typically burned out and they don't feel relevant anymore. There's new employees coming in that are taking over roles and responsibilities for those that have always had the same roles and responsibilities. Typically, people will want to leave for emotional reasons. They're just not motivated. And I always say that, and I wrote this down, when time becomes more important than money, then it's time to retire.
I love that. Yeah, that's true. Of course, there's other ways to know that it's time, but yeah, that's a good one. So what do you think is the cause of retirement changing so dramatically? I mean, is it technology? Is it, we just talked about how retirement is not the way it used to be. There's no set date. What do you attribute that to?
I think the fact that we're living longer, and we're a lot more focused on our health and how we are going to live a fulfilling life, more so than when our parents did or our grandparents did. I don't really think that they didn't have all the resources. They don't have all the social media. They don't have all the social connections that we always have, whether the social connections be in person or through Zoom or online or whatever. I think that that's pretty much the main reason, is that we're just living a lot longer.
Well, I think there's been something written about that the younger generation has higher demand for what they consider a quality of life and work-life balance. And I've read a lot about that with millennials. They have a different definition than maybe the baby boomer generation. And what it sounds like you're saying is everyone is looking to have a little more quality of life than maybe previous generations.
Right, exactly. And I think that's showing up in the fact that we're living a lot longer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. If you had only 60 seconds to coach your next client on retiring to the life that they love, what would be the advice that you give? I'm putting you on the hot seat by asking that question, so I apologize. But what would be the advice you would give?
Okay, let's see. I'd think about a 3-legged stool. And the 3 legs are time, health, and money. Like, what are they going to do to make sure that they have enough money to be comfortable and to live on. What are they going to do to stay healthy, both physically, emotionally, mentally? How are they going to, we invest in time. What are you going to do to invest in yourself to make sure that you're healthy mentally, physically, and emotionally? And time. What are you going to do? How are you going to fill your time so that you won't have any regrets when life is over? And I think those are three big things that we need to think about in retirement, because if you lose one, others are affected as well.
These are big questions that require big thought, lots of reflection. The answers may not come easily. And I think that's why a certified retirement coach is in order, because it's not easy to do it by yourself and figure it all out. And maybe some people can and do a fabulous job, but it sounds like you can really help people get there faster.
Yeah. And I do. And it's fun. And I love it.
So I love it. And I'm so glad you came on the show to talk about this, because I think it's an important topic. If people want to understand more about what it is that you do and how you might be able to help them, maybe they have some questions about your process, how can people get in touch with you?
I have a website. It's retirementhood.com, www.retirementhood.com. And my email address is Sue Mintz, altogether, SUE, MINTZ, at retirementhood.com.
Okay, and we'll also put your...
They can always give me a call if they want.
And then call you. Yeah, go ahead and give your phone number if you want.
Yeah, sure. 214-676-1888.
Now, if you didn't catch all that because you're driving down the road or whatever, it's all going to be in the show notes. So thank you so much, Sue. We really appreciate having you.
My pleasure. And again, kudos to you for helping your clients understand the importance of a holistic retirement plan.
Absolutely.
Okay, Michelle, so how can people get in touch with you if they have more questions for you?
Yeah, they can just reach out. Just click on our website. It's probably the easiest thing, GessnerWealthStrategies.com.
All right. Well, thank you both, ladies, and thank you for listening today. Please like, follow, and share this podcast with your friends. Until next time, I'm Wendy McConnell.
Thank you for listening to Retire to a Life You Love with Michelle Gessner from Gessner Wealth Strategies. We hope you were inspired to take steps to your financial freedom as you learned new techniques and strategies for managing your finances. To learn more about how you can improve your financial landscape, visit our website at www.gessnerwealthstrategies.com. That's GESSNER wealthstrategies.com. Or give Michelle and her team a call at 713-589-6448. And don't forget to click the follow button below to be notified when new episodes are available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Michelle Gessner or Gessner Wealth Strategies. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.